Before European contact, Africa was not a single place. It was a continent of thousands of societies, each with its own culture, language, and political system. From North Africa to Southern Africa, civilizations rose and fell over thousands of years. In the Nile Valley, ancient Egypt built monumental architecture that still confounds modern engineers. In Nubia and Kush, African kingdoms ruled alongside and sometimes over Egypt itself. In West Africa, powerful empires like Ghana, Mali, and Songhai controlled vast territories and trade routes. These were not primitive societies. They were structured states with taxation, diplomacy, and military organization. Africa did not wait to be discovered. Africa was already standing. Long before the Atlantic slave trade, Africa was deeply connected to the world. Gold from West Africa traveled across the Sahara into Europe and the Middle East. Salt, textiles, leather, and manuscripts moved through African trade networks. Cities like Timbuktu, Jenny, and Gao were not villages, they were international centers of commerce and learning. In East Africa, Swahili city-states like Kilwa and Mombasa traded with Arabia, India, and China. African sailors navigated the Indian Ocean centuries before European dominance. Africa was not isolated. Africa was central. One of the greatest lies ever told is that Africa had no education before Europeans arrived. In Timbuktu alone, there were universities and libraries housing hundreds of thousands of handwritten manuscripts. These texts covered mathematics, astronomy, medicine, law, philosophy, history. Scholars traveled from across Africa and beyond to study there. Education in Africa was not limited to books. Knowledge was preserved through oral traditions, apprenticeships, and specialized guilds. Blacksmiths, healers, architects, farmers, all trained through structured systems passed down over generations. Africa understood knowledge differently, but no less powerfully. African societies had governance systems long before colonial borders existed. Some were centralized kingdoms with kings and councils. Others were democratic assemblies where elders and community members made decisions together. Among the Igbo, political power was decentralized. Among the Yoruba, complex monarchies balanced authority with checks and rituals. Women held power too, as queens, priestesses, traders, and military leaders. Africa was not lawless, it was governed. Colonial powers did not bring order, they disrupted existing systems. Slavery did not define Africa, it was deeply scarred it. The Atlantic slave trade forcibly removed over 12 million Africans from their homelands. Families were torn apart, communities destabilized, entire regions were weakened. This was not an African invention, it was a global system fueled by European demand and enforced through violence. And yet history often blames Africa itself, ignoring the weapons, ships, and economic systems that made the trade possible. Slavery was not Africa's identity, it was something done to Africa. Why doesn't this history dominate textbooks? Because a people who know their past are harder to control. Colonial powers needed to justify domination. To do that, they portrayed Africa as empty, backward, and waiting to be saved. African achievements were minimized or ignored. European arrival was framed as civilization. This narrative was taught in schools, repeated in media, passed down through generations. Over time, even Africans began to doubt their own history. Erasure was not accidental, it was strategic. To say Africa did not begin with slavery is not to deny pain, it is to place that pain in context. Africa's story is one of resilience, of rebuilding, of survival against systems designed to erase it. Today, Africans across the continent and the diaspora are reconnecting with their roots. Language is being reclaimed, history is being re-examined, narratives are being challenged. This is not about pride without truth, it is about truth without distortion. Africa did not begin with slavery. It began with humanity, with civilization, with knowledge. Slavery was a chapter, not the cover. If we want to understand Africa's future, we must first remember its past. History did not forget Africa, it was rewritten, and now it is being remembered. If you believe Africa's story deserves to be told fully, subscribe to Africa Unforgotten TV.